Hi, I'm Monica, and welcome to part 2 of our two-part tutorial on how to run both batch and interactive queries using Starburst Galaxy. So the first thing we want to do is navigate to our clusters, and we want to see that we have both our batch and interactive cluster created. If you have not done this already, I invite you to join me in the part 1 tutorial where I walk you through all the information you need to create these clusters. If you have these created, the first thing we want to do is bump up the cluster size from free to extra small. So I'm going to do that using the little editor in the right hand corner. Perfect. So now our setup is done, and I want to kind of walk you through what we're trying to emulate here. The goal of this experiment is to evaluate some long-running queries and see how they perform on both an interactive and a batch cluster. We want to run the same query and see if we get different results. So the first thing I want to do is start up our interactive cluster because that's where we're going to run our query first. Okay, our interactive cluster is now up and running, so I want to navigate back to the query editor. And here what I want to do is select our interactive cluster, select the TCPH catalog, and then select the SF300 schema. Now what I want to do is paste in the query that is available in the part 2 tutorial blog post, and I'm then just going to run that query. As we can see, this join intensive and long running query actually ended in a query failure. Let's dive into the Trino UI to get a little bit more detail. This Trino UI is a great resource. It has a lot of awesome information on it. If you haven't looked at it, I really suggest doing so. What I want to do is scroll down to the task information at the bottom here. And what we're able to see is there are some failed tasks that then aborted the rest of the query. I want to draw your attention to the ID configuration. Each of these numbers means something, with the first number being the stage ID, the second number being the task ID, and the third number being the retry ID. Because this is just a standard cluster, all of the retry IDs are 0. If they were to actually retry, we would see a 1. So now I want to navigate back to Starburst Galaxy and see if we can go through the same process with the other cluster. So I'm going to go back to the clusters pane, and I'm going to stop the interactive cluster while also starting the batch cluster. So now that my batch cluster is up and running, I'm going to navigate back to the query editor. So I'm going to select the batch cluster, and we're going to select the same catalog, the TCPH catalog, and the same schema, SF300. So the goal of this is to run the same query, but now utilize the batch cluster capabilities of query failure recovery. So I'm going to run this and see what we get. This time we have a much happier result. We actually have a finished query. So let's look at the Trino UI again for more information. So here we can see the Trino UI. I'm going to go back down to the task information. Here we can see there are some examples of failed tasks that were then retried and completed. This is because of the query failure recovery at the task level. And like I previously mentioned, we can see in this third number in the task ID that if it is a 1, it is a retry. So it failed here and then was able to retry and complete. So thanks to our query failure recovery at both the task and later at the query level, we are able to finish longer running queries by enabling our batch capabilities. Thank you so much for joining me, and happy querying.